I'm Ewan Fox, and welcome to the first 4BR review, a new podcast series which I will be hosting with my colleague Chris Thomas on a regular basis throughout the year. As the name suggests, it's all about what is going on in the brass banding world, offering our opinions on views on events, topics, new releases, and just about anything else that's going on. A bit like usual then. On this first programme, we look back at the recent RNCM International Brass Band Festival in Manchester, where leading bands and world-class soloists gave us performances to savour, whilst we also look forward to the forthcoming trip to Bergen and the Norwegian National Championships at the magnificent Grieg Hall. All that, and we should just have about enough time to run through a few of the latest news stories to hit the banding world, as well as offer our recommendations on some recordings, releases, concerts and events to experience for yourselves in the coming weeks. First, though, my thanks go to Chris for agreeing to do this with me. I think it's going to be interesting, Chris.
It is going to be interesting, Ewan. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on in the band world, as we know. So I don't think we'll be short of a few things to say and chat about.
Well, let's go back a week then to start off with. The RNCM International Brass Band Festival in Manchester. I think we'll agree we had a great time, and a great, huge congratulations really go to David Thornton. The difficult second album syndrome, and I think he overcame it brilliantly after his debut last year. This really was a weekend that was a great success.
I think it was a triumph, Ewan. I mean, we had a terrific weekend, fantastic weekend of music making. I don't think any of us would have relished stepping into Paul Hindmarsh's shoes when David took the festival over, because my goodness, they were big shoes to fill. But I think David had to make the festival as his own. Last year was something of a baptism. This year, I think he really, really settled into it. Some of the changes are subtle, some of them are more obvious. But I really think he's moving in a different direction. He's doing a terrific job. And it was a fantastic weekend with great audiences.
I think that international ethos has been the real key to the change, isn't it? He had Trez Étoile there last year. He had Athena
Yeah,
Brass there this year. A lot of
yeah.
people just thought possibly it was just like a tick box exercise, but it absolutely wasn't indeed. And especially Athena Brass, they came over here and really made a huge impression. I have to say as well about that ethos and the format. The introduction, I think, of these soloists that cross over from the banding world really into the orchestral classical musical world as well. I think that's been a real plus point, linking it in with discussions and topics that really do matter to the banding movement. I think it's really now got an extra bit of vibrancy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that crossover element is far more prevalent now, isn't it? And it's increasing all the time, which is terrific. It's giving us this cross-fertilization of banding with the orchestral world. And Athena Brass, I thought, were fantastic. I mean, they brought a spirit. They were clearly enjoying themselves. They brought fine players. They brought commitment to the music, and they brought a very different program as well. At the heart of which was Lucy Pankhurst's new piece, Ghosts of Industry, which I thought was wonderful. It was a terrific piece and a terrific performance.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the highlights then. But as we say, from the Friday night when you had that Saxon Renaissance group, which was offered something really different about it, they do it. It's not often you get
Very
Baroque
much
tenor
so.
horn playing. I think that's a new thing for me. RNCM brass band and the junior
Absolutely.
brass band, and also that outreach that they give as well with the low brass, the trombone day, etc. I think that was something that really brought
Yeah.
something extra to it. Let's talk about a couple of those highlights then. I really have to say that the
Yes,
music,
indeed.
first of all, the music, great choices. It was wonderful to hear Prague against Australis, Freedom, Fireworks, Laudate, Dominum, Dances and Arias. There was something there for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, some wonderful choices of music. I mean, I totally agree. It was great to hear Prague again, a piece that, we all know had its share of controversy when it was used back in the areas in, oh gosh, it must be 20 years ago now, must it? Good while ago. But it's rarely heard, and strangely, I know it's had a couple of performances this week. One at the International Festival in Manchester and one in London. But it's great to hear that piece again. The other thing was that the backbone of Edward Gregson's music that ran through the whole weekend. Every concert featured something by Eddie. And I have to say, there were some of the best performances of Eddie's music that I can ever remember hearing. I mean, Black Dyke's performance of Men and Mountains on the Saturday night, for me, was one of the great highlights of the whole weekend.
It was interesting when David Thornton said that what you're going to hear this weekend are performances away from the contest stage. And it was so
Yeah,
interesting,
yeah,
especially that Black Dyke performance. All of a sudden, the
yeah.
work it was released almost from his shackles with Nicholas Charles, wasn't it? And it was absolute, and you have to say it was a majestic performance.
It was that there was a musical freedom about it that I just really enjoyed, and the whole concert was absolutely spectacular. But you sensed how much Nick was enjoying himself. You sensed how much the band were enjoying themselves. I mean, they were like a band unleashed in a good way. You know, it was a spectacular concert, and yeah, one of the real standout highlights for me of the whole weekend.
And talking about highlights, we could go from literally each program had highlight in it. It was great as well. The great and good, I was going to say as well, were there, weren't they? Paul Mailer was there because the Foden's play Fantasia on a theme
Absolutely,
of Purcell.
yeah.
Carl
Carl
Jenkins, flown in, I
Jenkins,
think, by private
absolutely.
aeroplane, I think came in as well
Yeah,
for that
as
one.
only Carl Jenkins
As
could be.
it, and of
Yes,
course
yeah,
you had Eddie, you had other people. It was great to see that interest from the composers. And again, when you hear those performances that were given, there's a reason why these top bands have got the scope, the ability, the stamina to play demanding programs. And I think there were so many highlights. And as you say, one of them was that Lucy Pankhurst, Ghost of Industry, played by Athena
yes,
Brass.
yeah.
Lucy, I almost wish we heard more of her music. It's difficult sometimes to really, when it's programmed, and you would say it's not really contest music, but that piece was so good. It should be really played many more times.
I mean, it was so evocative, wasn't it? I mean, really dark, wonderful scoring. I mean, the opening percussion effects were fantastic. So from the very first bars, it just held your attention. And I think part of the reason that we don't hear as much of Lucy's music as we should is the fact that she's very consciously chosen not to write for contests. I mean, she doesn't like writing test pieces. Ironically, I think Ghost of Industry could make a very good test piece, and she acknowledges that as
It's going to
well.
be used in America, funny enough.
Indeed,
I
yeah,
think it's
yeah.
being used in the first section in the US
Yeah,
Championship. So it in that respect, it does work,
it
doesn't
does.
it?
It does, and I think it's a piece that we will hear more of. And I totally agree. We should hear more of Lucy's music. But of course, there was so much new music. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen so many composers together in one place before, as I saw at the Royal Northern College last weekend. There were so many people there, as you say. It was great to meet people like Paul Mealer. But the number of premieres. In fact, I can't even remember how many there were, but it was a lot of premieres, wasn't it, over the course of the 3 days?
And there was, including Gregson's, of course, the kind of horn concerto, which was brilliantly
Absolutely.
played by
Ah,
Tim de
fabulous,
Messenia.
fabulous.
What a player, what a sound that boy's got, wasn't it? He was like hunting horn when he came in from outside and then back into the hall. But he was a stunning performance from him. But again, on the flip side as well, there was some young composers whose voices we haven't heard. There was two pieces that were played earlier by the two student composers.
Yeah,
Then there was
yeah,
a piece by Ed de Boer. You had
yeah,
Ricardo Moyer's tuba concerto,
yeah,
John
yeah,
Safas, Stella Wallace, Paul Terracini. There were new voices to be heard all the way through, and a special another one as well, Andrea Price's work. Again, talking
yeah,
about Black, who were possibly the star turn of the weekend. Her
yeah,
piece,
yeah.
short and to the point. It was a real stunner.
A real statement, and yeah, it was interesting how bands. I mean, for instance, Brighouse and David Bremner. I mean, what a star he turned out to be over the weekend. A wonderful trombonist, and did a terrific turn with Brighouse on the final night. But they brought a whole second half to their concert of Southern Hemisphere music that was largely unknown to all of us. And to have bands and conductors bringing new music that's new to the audiences. And of course, the wonderful thing is that the audiences at the Royal Northern College for the festival, they're totally receptive to all of this new music. You could see people were lapping it up. So I thought that was a real highlight. And again, going back to Athena Brass, it was the fact that much of their program was new to us, and there were some real discoveries in there, weren't there?
Talking about discoveries, the soloists, Ashley Hall Tai, Jen Oliverio,
Ah,
Benda
yeah,
Ilrod, and Gail Robertson were their soloists. All of them were
yeah,
superb. But talking about the soloists in particular, Childs, Bousfield, Bremner, Goldscheider, Smith, to Messenia, Tynan, Wales could have done with those against France, I think. These were real heavyweights in the best possible way, I think, calling them that part of it. They were all superb. So, yeah, it's very rare that you get to hear playing of that standard packed into just literally 2.5 days. That was a real treat.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you and how many years have we been going to the Festival of Brass? I mean, it must be. I mean, gosh, I played in it back in the early '90s, but back in the days when it was the BBC Radio 3 Band of the Year. But I don't think I've ever heard such an incredible collection of soloists over the course of one festival as we heard last weekend, and there were fascinating things about it. I mean, the contrast between Ian Bousfield's style of playing in Edward
Oh,
Gregson's trombone concerto
yeah.
against David Bremner's style of playing in Derek Bourgeois' trombone concerto. Both were wonderful, but they both brought completely different things to the stage. Bousfield flamboyance and extravagant in many ways in his gestures. David Bremner much more straight with little movement, communicating very much through the music. Whereas with Bousfield, you listen to the music, you also can't take your eyes off him because he's mesmeric. I mean, he's an incredible performer on the stage. So yeah, a wonderful group of soloists, and as you say, Tim de Messenier. What a sound! I don't think I've ever heard a player that produces a sound quite like that on a tenor horn before. I mean, he's a remarkable player. He almost bridges the gap between the sound of a tenor horn and the sound of a French horn. It's
I was
incredible.
interested when they because right at the beginning, Eddie Gregson, I think he dropped a little classical hint, didn't he? I think it was a bit of Mozart, whatever.
Yeah,
Was it
yeah,
in a little when he was off
yeah,
stage? You could see all the academics
yeah,
nodding in appreciation. It was like PG Woodhouse joke, it was, wasn't it? Well done.
yeah,
We
yeah.
all
It
picked up
was.
on that one there. But I have to say, you had David Childs literally inhabit the persona of Ernest Hemingway
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the piece, the Concerto Force of
I, th-
Nature.
I think we'll start calling him Ernest from now on, Ewan. Yeah, it was
Blimey,
remarkable. I mean, what a
the combination of
uh,
technique that he can put in, but and then lyricism with it, that was remarkable. And then you should say Ian Bousfield, it was almost theatrical, but it was like it was like
yeah,
Placido Domingo coming on stage in the opera, wasn't it?
yeah,
You're looking
yeah,
at him,
yeah.
all of a sudden you hear the voice, and it was a voice. It was a voice that could do
It was.
anything, absolutely anything.
Yeah,
And I have to say, one of the
yeah,
highlights for me was the little wink that he gave to Richard Marshall, just a little wink to say,
yeah,
"Yeah,
yeah,
guess what? I'm sent the stage here." And in a
yeah,
slightly subtle,
yeah,
different
yeah.
way, you had David Bremner when Lewis Barton was playing a solo line. He stepped
He stepped
away
back to the side of the stage, so respectful. That was it was a
to
little gesture, but it was something that you just sat back and thought, "That's class." That was a really classy and a really, given the fact that David was the soloist and a very fine soloist at that, just the fact that he was willing to set back and let Lewis revel in that moment, and yeah, it was a lovely gesture. It's just this fine musicianship and showing that he's thinking about everything that's going on the stage. Terrific.
I tell you a little bit as well. I have to say, Ben Goldscheider, what a player that chap
Oh,
is. No
God,
wonder
yeah,
he is. He's
yeah,
up for all these awards. He just came back from Oslo where he had played, came straight to the
yeah,
RNCM, gave a
yeah,
masterclass, and then turned up on stage. There is a performer. But strangely, the French horn concerto does work with a brass band. It is that, as you say,
it does,
it was
it
that
does,
link with the two concertos from the Gregson ones. You could see it's almost a
yeah,
seamless link between the French horn and the tenor horn, the way in which he writes, but a way
yeah,
in which the two of them
yeah,
performed it as well.
yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, Ben is wow, and I don't think I've heard any better a French horn player over the years. But and listen, by the way, I mean, literally yesterday, a CD arrived of Ben playing Gavin Higgins' recent horn
Oh yeah,
concerto. Now, I would recommend anybody to listen to that recording because it's a wonderful recording, and Gavin's concerto is a wonderful piece. But what I loved about Eddie's concerto was that, and it's one of his early pieces, isn't it? I mean, it was written in that sort of
1971,
group
I
of
think.
early
Yeah,
concertos. Exactly around about the time of the tuba concerto, and there was a group of early concertos that he wrote. But doesn't it stand up well? I mean, we'd not heard it for some years. I recorded it in the early 1990s, I remember, with Eddie conducting back in the days when I was playing. And all these years on, it still sounds fresh, it sounds vital. The slow movement is absolutely wonderful. And Ben's playing in that slow movement, wow. I mean, just sublime playing. And the combination of the textures between the horn and the band, it works wonderfully.
have to say as well, congratulations to it's unfair to call them the brass band soloists which were featured. They weren't, because they stood shoulder to shoulder
Yeah,
with these world-class soloists. I
yeah,
have to say, Tom Smith with Brighouse and Rastrick, lovely, elegant, eloquent performance of the Dennis Wright Cornet Concerto. Tommy Tynan really giving it the full beans with the Ricardo Moya one,
yeah,
which was a very interesting
yeah,
piece. I think I described it with the
yeah.
composer. It was a bit like the musical version of Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. If you've ever seen that film, it was. It's very.
I can't say I have, you, and
Get and
no.
see that film. It's a little bit like that. It's all about a story about finding love and meaning with, and it's a sci-fi and
Yeah,
fantasy,
yeah.
whatever. But that was
It's a
another fine
strangely
performance as
nostalgic,
well.
quite a nostalgic kind of piece, wasn't it? That tuba concerto, and quite poignant at times as well. Um, but the Dennis Wright Cornet Concerto, I mean, my goodness, that exudes nostalgia. But what a fine player Tom Smith is. I mean, the sound. He's got one of the most pure, beautiful cornet sounds I think you'll ever hear,
Easy.
and it was just so suited to that
Yeah,
piece.
and very easy style of his playing, like a very natural
Yeah, yeah,
appreciation of line, especially in a lyrical
yeah,
concerto like that. It was so well done. I
yeah,
take my
yeah,
hat off to him. Absolutely take my hat off to him.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
personal little
absolutely.
highlights then for you from the festival. What for you were the ones that really stood out? Just those little moments.
Yeah, I think for me, David Bremner, who I have met and interviewed before, but I just thought David was a real discovery to see him conduct, and I'd never really watched him conduct before, and to see him work with Brighouse was a joy. Um, I loved Black Dyke's program. I loved Men and Mountains, which concluded their concert, which I thought was possibly the finest performance of Men and Mountains I've ever heard, quite honestly. I mean, it was absolutely magnificent. Thoroughly enjoyed hearing Prague again. That for me, just to hear that piece again, and the grim darkness of it that Ian and Tredegar brought to the music was a wonderful highlight. Um, and the spirit of the whole thing. I mean, I just felt that the whole weekend was a wonderfully refreshing, vigorous, and musically successful weekend. And the audiences, I'm not sure I've ever seen audiences that were so consistent over every concert. Even the early morning slots, which we've we've tended to call the graveyard slots in the past, haven't we? 11 o'clock on a Saturday
Yeah,
morning and
but
11 o'clock on a Sunday.
the
But Athena on the Saturday morning had a really good audience, which was wonderful for them. I was so pleased for them in that respect. And the Royal Northern College Band on the Sunday morning, and we should mention Katrina Mazzella did a wonderful job with the college band. I mean, playing Simon Dobson's Horror Show. My goodness, that piece takes some playing, and they really turned in a good performance as well.
It was great to hear that, because a few years ago, as I said, there's some questions about the commitment with the RNCM band. They give
Yeah,
a subpar performance there, but ever since then they've been really on point. I think Katrina did
yeah,
a wonderful job with them. Really made sure that they were well prepared. Great clarity about her conducting. Also, Harry Lai, who was the chap who
yeah,
came in and did Mosaic.
yeah.
He's a
Class,
Now he's a
class. Yeah,
star. Now there's a
yeah,
star to look out for, I think,
yeah.
with that part of it
Absolutely,
there. Great
absolutely.
stuff
Yeah,
there. Mark Bowsey, my hat off to him with the junior RNCM band. And talking about
terrific.
those two little pieces, they did one by Naomi Style. Sorry, they did a piece by Tamsin Crook called Clash of the Titans, and Amber Hooton
Yeah.
called Sailor's Hymn. They were really great to see that. Macclesfield Youth Band as well with Louise
Oh,
Renshaw.
terrific,
What
terrific.
a great thing for them to do it. 20 years that she's been there at the helm, and 40 years in total. What a great band. The ethos about them summed up everything what the RNCM Festival is about. Nothing to do with competition. It's all about the
No,
holistic approach of providing great musical education for those youngsters.
indeed,
So then for them
indeed.
to be part of it was absolutely well deserved, and some great playing. For me, I
Yeah.
have to say that little wink given by Bousfield really stood out. Just the just the cheek of it, but just knowing that you can get away with it. But he was absolutely superb.
But there was
Special
there was
mention.
some a wonderful repartee there between Ian and Richard, wasn't there? I mean, you could sense it was a very special moment. I agree with you.
And great. And one little final one just before we go move on to the next one. The discussion that you were part of as well about getting the next generation of composers to write for us.
Yeah,
There is
yeah.
talent out there, as I think we've seen throughout there, from new composers, existing composers, composers possibly we've only just touched on or we need to ask again. So things are looking
Mm.
up and not as bleak as possibly we expect, but we've got to have trust in composers and say, what do you want to write for us? Because these bands can play it.
Yeah, I think we've got to have trusting composers. You're absolutely right. I think we've got to place our faith in them. We have to do that because historically we haven't always done that, and I think going forward we have to be willing to do it, and we have to be willing to engage, and we have to be open to new ideas and new creative thought. And I think what came out of that discussion, which Paul Hindmarsh and Lucy Pankhurst were also involved in alongside myself, was that a lot of it comes down to identifying that talent young. And then it's how we nurture and how we develop that talent through workshops, through mentoring schemes. And I think there's a lot of work that can be done going forward to bring that creative talent on. I mean, it's the lifeblood of brass bands, and without that new creative talent, we said at the time it's almost as if you're cutting off the blood supply to brass bands. So I think that's a vitally important um, way to go forward. It's something that we need to look at it again, and I think it's something that brass bands England are going to be quite heavily involved in the future, which is good.
Great stuff for that then. But that was the RNCM. We had a fantastic weekend there. Another weekend to look forward to, this time in Bergen and the Norwegian National
Yeah,
Championships. We've been there a few times and reported on it. It's a wonderful event, great atmosphere, great playing, of course, and a wonderful selection of the weird and the wonderful, fantastic test pieces and own choice works on show as well. Again, the
yeah,
Norwegians, I have to say, though, they've got possibly a little bit of catching up to do, because I went to the Swiss National Championships at the end
yeah.
of last year. They seem to be, it's like a steam train powering ahead with the bands that they've got there. But the Norwegians are not far behind. This is a great weekend.
It's always a great weekend, and it's as you say, there's a great atmosphere. Well, it's a great venue, first of all, isn't it? The Greek Hall is it's a wonderful venue, fantastic acoustics. They get terrific audiences there. The bands are adventurous. We've got an interesting test piece, haven't we? A piece called Catharsis.
Catharsis. Let's talk.
Um,
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think we heard it at the Europeans in
yes,
Malmo. It was by
Goethe Club,
Goethe brass
Goethe.
band.
Yeah,
They played at they played at the Swedish Championship. Interestingly, they didn't decide, even though they were part of the process,
yes,
they didn't go with the Lost Circle.
yeah,
They were stonehenged out. I think I think the Norwegians by the time they came to it. So they've gone with Catharsis. Now
yeah.
I understand that the bands themselves thought that there was so much percussion in the Lost Circle, and they may have
Mm.
gone for something else. There's a heck of a lot of percussion in Catharsis,
Yeah, there is.
I have to
It's a
add.
busy
And
piece.
the
It's a
musical
busy piece.
language, yeah, the
Yeah,
musical language is quite complex as well.
yeah,
Fours against threes, harmonic changes, etc. So
yeah.
that's going to be an interesting choice to find out what the bands make of it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a terrific test piece, and we've not listened to it carefully probably for a couple of years since we heard Goethe Brass played in Malmo in the Europeans, but I seem to remember they gave a pretty terrific performance of it at the time. But as you say, it's complex music. There's a lot going on there, and I think the bands that will play it well, will find a clarity in it that some will find difficult to find. And of course, we've got bands like Ikanger, Manga, Stavanger, all the usual suspects in Norway that are going to give terrific performances. Um, but
There's
also,
a great conductors there as well, I think,
yeah,
which I think
yeah,
will look at that score and revel in it. Interesting. I was just looking about the piece itself. It's an exploration of purification through musical art, a process that brings a sense of spiritual renewal and release from moral ambiguities such as pity and fear. That's right up our street, that is, isn't it? I have to say that, but that's the type of music we like listening to.
couldn't have put it better ourselves, Ewan, could we?
it gonna, it is. So that's going to be a great test for the bands. And as I say, the last couple of years, the best performances that we've actually heard there are when the bands have a look at those contemporary pieces. It tends to suit the Norwegian psyche a bit different.
Yeah,
Myth
yeah.
Forest, I remember being to Brass Blot was another one. The
Some
bands
great,
play
yeah,
it really, really well,
yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. But the other one, of course, is then when we go back the following day,
Oh, yeah.
and then we get the absolute bangers coming in from the blockbusters. And I was looking at the
I'm
list
looking
that
at it
they've
now,
got
Ewan,
there.
and it's fascinating. It is
Oh,
fascinating.
I tell you what, we don't have to go out for the pee, do you? Because you've got to stay in for that one. I'm going to say, here we go. See, we got
So how long
And
is
it's
it
all
since we've
this
heard
part.
"Waiting for a Pain Hit," Paul McGee? I mean, what a choice. What a choice. I mean, we've not heard that for it was one of his early pieces actually, "Waiting for a Pain Hit," and it has been used competitively before, but we've not heard it for years. And, Paul, funnily enough, we were talking about Paul at the debate about young composers last week, saying that Paul, you know, sadly, Paul, I think, has been neglected quite badly by bands. So to see a band playing that work is wonderful, and I think it's Ilia Brass with Stigmersk that will be playing that. But I mean, it's a terrific list of pieces. As you say, conductors. We've got Peter Sebastian Silve. What an artist he is.
Oh, it's great to have
Who's
him back.
conducting
He's
Oslo
like an
Fjord.
electric eel.
Absolutely. So
He's like an electric eel. Remember him coming on once at the European Championships? He was the first one really to do the trick where the audience was still fiddling about in their seats. He got the band to play the first, I think it was DV Media Nocte at the
yeah,
time
yeah.
with
He'd not even
Manga
gone
when they
onto the
won it.
stage, had
And
he?
they played the first 10 bars before anybody had sat down in the chair. And from then on, they were absolutely brilliant. He is a
He's a
fantastic
showman.
conductor.
He's a
I think,
showman as well.
he is.
Technically a gifted conductor, but he's a great
I'm
showman.
back in I'm talking back in contrast with you. Got Andres Hansen with
Yeah,
Bjørsvik Brass, who was
yeah,
possibly the most elegant man
yes,
you've ever seen conducted in your life.
yeah,
Wonderful conductor.
yeah,
They're doing Partita. You got Broughton Brass with Dave Morton, Music the Spheres.
yeah,
Kleppe, Brussels Requiem, Manga, Gabrieli Fantasy.
yeah.
Blimey, they're all coming
And
here.
another
Oslo Sketches from Nowhere.
Scottish
Journey of
Sketches
the
from
Lone
Nowhere.
Wolf.
Great piece.
Blimey.
We've not heard Sketches from Nowhere for a few years, have we? That's for me. That's one of Thomas Doss's best pieces.
And the two interesting ones that really stand out. Turtness are a great band. They're a dark horse
Yeah,
with Paul Holland. Closer to the they're doing Perihelion by Philip Spark. But the two for me
yeah,
that stick out. First of all, So Spoke Albion, Gavin Higgins, piece that Tredegar played at the European Championship.
yes,
Wonderful piece of music, being played by
yeah,
Stavanger
yeah.
and Ivan Mailemans. It will be so interesting to see what
Yeah.
he makes of that piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Ivan is another super stylish conductor, isn't he? I mean, he's just an elegant conductor, and we've seen him working with bands in the UK. But that will be a fascinating mix with Ivan and Stavanger. But even in the lower sections, I mean, in the first division, you've got bands playing Myth Forest. You mentioned that a couple of minutes ago, a piece that we remember from some years ago. You've got a first division band playing Journey of the Lone Wolf. I mean, for goodness sake! I mean, these are huge
Well, not
pieces.
only that, I think you got an Divi Media Nocte, As a Voice were in them.
Yeah,
Antiphonies on
yeah,
the theme of William Byrd, Hypercube, that's in the
yeah,
first section. But
yeah,
dropping back just
absolutely.
immediately, Ikanger, of course, are going for a hat trick under Florent Didier. And the
Yeah,
piece that they've chosen
yeah.
as their own choice is Concerto Number 10 for brass band, our great friend Ludovic Nero. And this is the piece that hasn't really hasn't got a title. It's just a bunch of asterisk marks. But of course, it's a
Yeah,
concerto for brass band and Ons Martino. Now,
yeah,
whether or
yeah.
not they got an Ons Martino player, I don't know how many there are in Norway at the present time, or they're going to use it on a machine which I've heard played before. This is a real interesting choice.
Well, if anybody knows an On Martineau player, it's Florent Didier, isn't it? It's he must know a few in Paris, I suspect, because there can't be many outside of
Oh, there must
France,
be.
can there? Quite
There must be
honestly,
there's a
so,
thriving Ons Martino community. I'm quite sure of it somewhere. But I heard it once played in Switzerland. I can't remember who
yeah.
played. I think maybe Trez or whatever. And they actually had an Ons Martino player. He was about 85 years of age, and they actually put him in a band jacket. He looked completely out of place, but the sound of the instrument is incredible.
It's
It's like going
ethereal,
back
isn't
to
it?
Star Trek. Yeah, it's like going back to Star
Yeah,
Trek in
yeah,
1968. It is with William
yeah.
Shatner, but it
Like the
actually
theremin. Do you
blends
remember
in
the theremin? That was another
the
instrument that was quite
theremin.
interesting. Yeah,
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 Mr. Theremin actually designed that, didn't he? The bloke. There we are. I don't know who
yeah,
Mr. Ons
yeah.
Martino was, but there we go. But yeah, I have to say it's a brave choice. But if any
Yes,
band
it
can
is.
do it, they can do it. After playing Jesus in Tibet last year, and Ons
Yeah.
Martino must be easy really for them. But what, as we say, great choices. Really looking forward to it. And then, as you also say, some of these other sections. Second section, Red Priest,
Red
Essence of
Priest. Red
Time, Hope.
Priest. Yeah,
Yeah, Red Priest.
yeah.
And then a piece which I'm looking forward to called The Impermanence of Flow by
Great title.
Ivan
Great
Laga.
title. Yeah.
I am. I
Yeah.
haven't got a clue what it means, but Ivan Lager, who is a great trombone player
Yeah.
out there, so it'll be interesting what
Yeah.
that one will be like. I got a funny feeling it's going to be Crash Band Wallop, but you never know. And then even in
Yeah.
the third and fourth and fifth sections, Ballet for Band and Blitz, third section, Mountain
Yeah.
Views and Penley in the fourth, Headland Fantasy and Fanza de Matassa 2.0 by Reed Gilliard in the fifth. This is one of the great joys. Sometimes ambition overtakes reality in places, but the sheer verve, the
Yeah.
vibrancy, and the
Yeah.
eagerness to just play music that you want to enjoy, that's what places the Norwegian Championships as such a memorable event.
Yeah, I think it's unique in that respect, and they've. I love the ethos of Norwegian banding, where bands will play these pieces for the sheer love of it. Yes, there might be the odd cases where they overreach slightly technically, but the enthusiasm, the commitment, the willingness to play adventurous music, you've got to admire them, haven't you? It's a great spirit.
Well, we're looking forward to that. We'll be flying out, I think, sometime next week. And we'll be reporting back at it on time, I would have thought, for our second episode of the 4BR review. So we got something to look forward to.
Yep.
We got something on the agenda anyway. Finally, then, let's go forward to look for our picks. Seeing as now that we are going to be reviewing, let's go to do, first of all, possibly concerts to go through. I'm going to put my first one up. It's not really a brass band concert, but I'm taking the hint that that was given by on our friends on another podcast, which is on the Smith and Grezzy podcast, Andrew Baker, and he said that everybody should go out and either see a brass band competition concert or a concert per se during the year. So my one is going to be the National Orchestra of Wales, conducted by Ryan Bancroft, and this is actually in Cardiff on Friday the 14th of February, where they're going to be playing Shostakovich 6, a brand new world premiere by Gavin Higgins, and also it's going to be featuring Håkan Hardenberger on trumpet. So I got to say, that's going to be a real great night to remember for that one. As I say, Håkan is going to be playing the Weinberg Trumpet Concerto, which is a real fearsome piece.
Yeah,
And
it
then
is.
Gavin's is a monstrous little suite, which is the based on the opera that he wrote, The Monstrous Child, which is all about the tale of Hel, who's half goddess, half corpse, daughter of Loki, the Norse god of the dead. Typical Gavin. One of the movements is called Slither Plop, Out I Come, and to close, the closing movement is called Stop Fighting, or I'll Smash Your Skulls. So with a titles like that, it's going to be a brilliant piece. So if you're anywhere near the Hodgenett Hall or the Brangwyn Hall on Friday the 14th and the 15th of February, get along for that one. What about yourself? Is there something that you were going along to see?
No, is the answer. I have to say, if I could go to anything, it would be the concert that you've just said, because for all of those reasons, I think that's going to be a fascinating night, and particularly the fact that Håkan Hardenberger and Gavin Higgins will be in the same hall at the same time, and Håkan has commissioned so many new pieces over the years, hasn't he? And wouldn't it be a fantastic prospect to think that Gavin Higgins could potentially write a trumpet concerto for Håkan Hardenberger? What a fantastic
If you say,
prospect
well,
that would
as you
be.
said, you've listened, yeah, you've listened to the French horn concerto. The
Yeah,
middle
yeah,
movement, the French horn concerto is sublime. It's
it is.
absolutely like
It is.
falling leaves coming from trees. It's
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful.
yeah, yeah,
Well, contest then. We're brass banders. We all have a contest. Same weekend in Wales. Wales is going to be the hub of brass banding for that
yeah,
weekend, Saturday,
yeah.
the 15th of February. We got the Welsh Open at Newport's Riverfront, and we got the Unibrass Championships at Cardiff University,
Yeah.
which strangely, ironically, is possibly the last bit of music that's going to be taking place at Cardiff University now that they've announced that they're closing down their
Sadly,
music
yeah,
department. So
yeah,
if you're around, get there.
yeah, yeah.
So it's great. That's going to be two great events.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think definitely that was terrible news about the Cardiff University department, and I think we remember back in the day it was the composer Alan Hodinott that really made that department what it is. It was a thriving music department. In fact, one of the composition professors there is a composer called Arlene Sierra, who's the wife of Kenneth Hesketh, who we know quite well, who's written
All right. Yeah.
brass band pieces. So yeah, sadly, that on a rather more unfortunate note, that's one item of very sad news that we've heard this week. But yes, the Welsh area, as usual, is going to be a real prospect and a hotbed of activity going forward. And of course, we've got all the area championships coming up in due course.
Yeah, we're looking forward to those then. So that's the contest out of the way. We're going to see those two of them going on in Wales. CDs, because as always, great to see there's some great releases in 2024, and there's some plenty coming out in 2025.
Yeah.
One choice I think you want to put forward, which is one that you've had a sneaky preview with, Peter Moore.
Yes, I'm very fortunate. I had an advanced review copy of this through from Shandos only a matter of a few days ago. It's Tredegar, of course, with Peter, but my goodness, what a player! The focal point of the disc, I guess, is Simon Dobson's trombone concerto Shift, which was commissioned by Paul Hindmarsh, actually. And which Peter, I mean, it's a staggeringly difficult piece, as you'd expect. But I mean, Peter's playing is absolutely flawless. There were some lovely slower numbers and smaller pieces that just demonstrate the breadth of his style. But the piece that I've got to say really grabbed my attention was the good old Gordon Langford Rhapsody for trombone. It's a piece that I've always loved. I mean, I can remember hearing it, way back in the 80s when I started banding, and I've heard many players play it over the years, but I don't think I've ever heard anybody play it with the lucidity, the sound, the freedom, and just the sheer musicianship that Peter Moore brings to the music. And you could argue, yes, a slightly dated piece, perhaps in some ways by modern standards, but my goodness, when somebody plays it as well as Peter Moore does, it's a special experience to listen to it. So that, for me, I think the disc is actually released by Shandos late in March. But that, for me, is a disc that anybody that loves the trombone and anybody that loves quality brass playing generally should not be without.
Yeah, I think it's out on March the 21st. There's the Leisden Concertino is on there, as you say, Shift. The Langford, he plays Annie Laurie, he plays on I'm Getting Sentimental All of You. It is, when somebody's playing well, when the rest of the band just shuts up. There's no moving in chairs, dropping in mutes, they just listen. And that was the case with that one. That's a fantastic one. And also one to mention, just come out, Tim de Messenia's Beyond the Paradox. And as we say, really impressed by his playing there. This has been a mammoth task. He's commissioned a number of works to go on here. It's been, a wonderful project that he has done. He's put so much work into it. The pieces are brilliant. He's got such a wide range of composers doing it for him. He has really pushed the tenor horn onto another level with this, and the playing on it, I have to say, is outstanding.
It is. Well, it's a double disc as well, isn't it? So I mean, I bought a copy in Manchester at the Royal Northern last weekend, and for £13, I think it was, you get two CDs that are absolutely jam packed with new material. It's great, obviously, that the Gregson is on there, the new tenor horn concerto that Eddie has written for Tim. But he's a very clever commissioner, because I think the pieces that are on there demonstrate a very wide range of music, but they also demonstrate a very wide stylistic range as far as Tim himself as a player is concerned. So he doesn't do it by halves. He's a player that challenges himself, and that's that's a terrific thing.
Well, I have to say that's one to look out for, and hopefully we'll have the reviews of that then by this next program. I'm just going to put two quick ones in there for if you just get the opportunity to anybody out there. They're not brand new ones, but they're ones that have come through to me, and I'm going to really enjoy the Neoteric Ensemble Volume 1 from 2023. This is a sextet made up of brass and wind, trumpets and saxophones, etc. It's got James Fountain in the lineup, Richard Watkins, Andy Miotti in the ranks. 6 original pieces by the likes of Rob Buckland, Andy Panayai, Toby Street, and Dan Jenkins. That's a real cracker. I'm really going to enjoy that. And one, I have to say, retro is the new. Everybody loves a bit of retro at the moment. Waterworld by Dopey Monkey. Now, this is a brilliant group, Chris, I have to tell you. Daniela Price and Martin Lee Thompson, they've done great work. You want to actually check them out. It's so retro, this has been released on a cassette. So I've actually got to try and find a cassette player to actually hear it. It's all about...
Like vinyl. It's making a comeback, Ewan. Like vinyl. It's on its way back.
I'll have to get my Walkman out now to use it to do it. But that's it. But it's a reflection of their journey following the canal pathways in Falkirk. And they're a great duo. They do so much for like Scottish chamber music, small and performances. They go all over the place. I'm going to really enjoy that one there. And finally, literature. It's not often that many people in the brass band world do this one, but I think I'm going to give you this one, The Wilfred Heaton, His Life, His Music by Paul Hindmarsh. It was launched at the RNCM Festival, and I have to say, as a labour of love, it is an absolute triumph. It's a superb book, beautifully published as well, and the amount of work that Paul has put into it is incredible.
I mean, my copy is sitting in front of me at the moment, and I think that as you say, it's a labour of love. It's a definitive piece of work. I mean, it's impossible to imagine that anything could be written on such a scale again. It's almost impossible to imagine that anything could be written on such a scale again about any brass composer, let alone Wilfred Heaton. But this is something that Paul's been working on for years. It's been a slow, time-consuming process of interviews, collating material. Very cleverly, what he's done is it's almost two books in one. He split the biographical element from the technical element. Now Paul is a wonderful musical analyst, as we know. He can dissect pieces, and the whole second half of the book really is a minute dissection of some of Heaton's finest pieces, which is fascinating for those of us that like that kind of thing. But it's very clever that he separated that from the biographical element, because the first half of the book, the biography, makes absolutely fascinating reading, and some of the stories, some of the anecdotes. And of course, what we have to remember is that Wilfred Heaton was a notoriously private man. He shunned interviews. He didn't like the limelight. He was a very private character, kept himself to himself, which makes the book all the more remarkable, because Paul is probably uniquely placed to do this, but he's actually managed to just retrieve so much personal material through friends, people that knew him, family. It's a remarkable piece of work, and I don't think anybody could produce something like that again. I'm not sure Paul himself would have the energy to produce something like that again, to be honest. But yeah, definitive work, and I think everybody should read it.
30 quid from all good booksellers. I think you get it on World of Brass as well.
Absolutely.
So if you make sure you do it, and I
Yeah.
actually got Paul to sign mine, so there you are. I've got to keep it now to do that one. My one is a book that's come out it's on the Times bestseller set. It's called Times Echo: Music, Memory in the Second World War by Jeremy Eichler. I think that's Eichler, I think it is. And it's the case for the power of music as culture as memory, using the experience and stories of four towering compositional figures: Shostakovich, Britten, Schoenberg, and Richard Strauss. Now, I haven't really delved into it as such at the moment, but the critical acclaim that the book has had has been incredible. It's about, as you say, the story of these four composers, their wartime experiences, and the music that they produced because of that, and how that now can be used as a cultural touchstone to inform us of both that time and what the future holds for us. It's one, critical acclaim from everybody. So I'm going to really enjoy reading that one. So yeah, I find out a bit more about Shostakovich, Britten, Schoenberg, and Strauss. There's a foursome for you. So that's going to do that one. So I got
Absolutely,
to do it.
absolutely.
So do that one. So there. So finally, then, just a quick little roundup before we finish. Chris, this has been great to talk with you about this. I have to say a little shout out as well to Ben Goldscheider, who has now been nominated for a Royal Society, Philharmonic Society Award. I think he is there in nominated in one of the classes there for the best instrumentalist. And if you remember, Katrina Marcella Wheeler has also been nominated in the inspiration class. So congratulations, both of them to there. Also to the Slide Action Trombone Quartet, who've been nominated in 2 categories of the BBC Music Magazine Awards for their CD Rebuild, which I reviewed on 4Barsrest a little while ago.
Terrific, yes, really terrific.
Yeah, so congratulations. So if you, as they say in elections in certain parts of the world, make sure you get out early and vote, and then vote again and again and again if you can get away with it. So please do that. And finally, just a little shout out as well. Stephen Mead did recently give a presentation to the Association of Brass Band Adjudicators about his criteria-based methodology. Now, Steve has been going on this. He has been evangelical in his zeal about this, and we've been with him when he's used it at a number of events. But what has made it more pertinent that he's going to be in the box, not only in the Midlands, but in Yorkshire. So he is going to be under the spotlight. It's going to be interesting to find out what his experiences are of that as well.
Yeah, it's. I mean, as you say, we've seen Steve working with this system for many years. He is, again, as you say, evangelical in his thoughts about it. And I've sat with Steve at many major contests as I do. You know, I tend to write my comments in my way. Steve uses his criteria-based adjudication system. Generally, we get to the same place. I wouldn't say that there haven't been differences of opinion over the years, and we do have a smile and we do have a laugh about it. But the reality is that I think the fact that Steve has actually now presented this in the way that he has, it's a fascinating thing. I know that people will have mixed opinions of it. I know that some people will agree with it, and I know that some people won't. It's as simple as that. It will always be controversial to some degree, but Steve has been refining this system for so many years that he's got it off, I think, to as fine an art as he's probably ever going to get it to now.
Well, we'll see whether or not he's going to win any more fans and friends. I got to give it him the bravery of the man. Never ceases
Ah,
never
fantastic.
ceases to amaze me. It'd be interesting to find out what comes of it after Yorkshire, especially. Chris,
Yeah,
thanks very
yeah.
much for joining me. I really enjoyed that last
Pleasure.
45 minutes or so, and I'm hoping that we're going to do a number of these over the next couple of months and throughout the year. And we're going to come back as well and hopefully get additional guests to join us, and so we can do some more in-depth interviews as well. So that's the
Yeah.
first 4BR review. Chris, many thanks for joining us. And I have to thank everybody who
Thanks,
has
Ewan.
helped us with trying to put this together for the first time. I'll hopefully catch up with you in a few days' time as we head off to Norway. Thanks, Matt, and I'll see you very soon. Thanks a lot.
Bye bye now.